Hello everybody, James here. Now, I try not to do pay-per-view or television recaps or reviews or that kind of thing because it simply takes too long and there's enough people blathering on about them that it just seems no point for me to do so. But what I like to do is I like to find the most interesting or most ridiculous or straight-up cringeworthy stories and then talk about them instead. And none come more cringeworthy than a brief interview conducted during the AEW Revolution PPV with a pair of actresses who appear in the recently released Queen of the Ring biopic. Right, so Queen of the Ring features Emily Brett Rickards as the legendary women's wrestler Mildred Burke and tells the stories of her struggles with wrestling and Billy Wolfe, who was a husband and manager at the time, and then ultimately it led to a shoot fight with June Byers for ultimate control of women's wrestling in the United States. But Emily Brett Rickard was apparently unavailable to do any promotional appearances for AEW to hype the movie, and it's their target audience, so it's the perfect place to do it. And then neither was Josh Lucas, who played Billy Wolfe, or in fact anybody on top of the bill in the film, which included Kaylee Farmer, who wrestles under the name of Camille. But as far as we know, she's still under AEW contract, but they didn't get her to promote it either. But that's a story for another video, by the way. But what we are left here with is the 12th and 13th highest billed actors in the picture. So I've got to read these names. Kelly Berglund, who was Crystal in Heels, and Lord help us, a former model called Damaris Lewis. So after the Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher cage match concluded, the cameras are pointed to ringside, where we find Damaris and Kelly and Queen of the Ring director Ash Alvidson, who is the son of John Alvidson, who directed Rocky and the Karate Kid franchise. Anyway, the director plugs the film's good reviews, and then he demands that Tony Schiavone turn the microphone over to the ladies instead. That's when Damaris Lewis says the following. 1 second, here it is.
One thing I learned about pro wrestlers, y'all know you're gonna win before anybody else does. So thank you for teaching me that.
On a pay-per-view as well, right in the middle of the show. All we found out last weekend at WWE's Elimination Chamber show. It's one thing to allow a celebrity into the ring who is like ill-prepared and doesn't know how to work. But as bad as Travis Scott was, at least he kept kayfabe, right? I mean, it's a totally different kettle of fish, right? That not only to wheel out somebody to some clown to shit on the show during the show, by the way, but nobody has even heard of her. Right, so it could have been any random fan being interviewed, and they could have said, well, she's from Queen of the Ring, and everyone would just nod, and yeah, all right, fine, and nobody would be any the wiser. But now, it's not that Damaris exposed the business, quotation marks. Everybody knows wrestling is a work. It's that she exposed the business during the show, when all the fans and all the people watching on pay-per-view or wherever else we're watching it live. I mean, put it this way, fans are doing their darndest to try and get into the matches as if there was actually a semblance of reality attached to them, thereby heightening their enjoyment. By standing up and saying, you all know this is fake as fuck, right? You're just pulling the rug of enjoyment from under everybody, making people feel stupid for spending their money on enjoying their pastime by getting lost in the moment. It's very easy to feel stupid for watching wrestling in the first place. People don't need any more reasons to, quite frankly, reminding them, especially during the shows. But you'd think after working on a film that involves wrestling, Damaris would know maybe the importance of kayfabe, or at least to maintain the illusion for the enjoyment of the show during the show. At the very least, everyone's constantly breaking kayfabe, but at least during the show, for the most part, we pretend it's real and get invested. But I mean, imagine even in 2025, you know, the wrestlers are wrestling, and it's towards the end of the match, and maybe the commentators during the near fall say, hey, keep in mind though, everybody, that they're actually friends in real life, and they've worked out this fake match in the back and have already been told to finish by Booker Tony Khan, so, you know, don't worry about it, everything's under control. Although maybe not, Damaris doesn't know this, because as I said, Damaris and Kelly were 12th and 13th on the bill, and were merely bit players whom were probably on set for like a week. So, I mean, what they know about probably, not Kelly, because she was in Heels at least, but Damaris, she was in apparently 2 scenes, right? And one of them she's barely in at all, so she's barely in the film. Anyway, and Damaris says this to Tony Schiavone, right? Who stands there smiling, probably dumbfounded if he was listening to her at all. And then he just goes, and then just immediately just passes the microphone on to Kelly to start talking as well, who was at least had more of a semblance as not to shit on everybody's good time during the show. I mean, but the thing is, poor Tony, what else could Tony do in this situation? So, no, they're not. No, you can't do anything, so you just have to sort of smile and take it. The most troubling aspect of all this, actually, is did Damaris only just realise that wrestling is bullshit? I mean, she's a full-grown woman in her mid-30s. How can this possibly be a revelation to anybody over the age of 12? But apparently, for her, it was. But the irony of Damaris's comments was that they came right after the double juice cage match between Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, who in their own way were trying to kill the business by kicking out of every single conceivable move, including Oz cutters, barbed wire, hidden blades, and brainbusters onto chairs, and a Styles clash onto thumbtacks, and a Spanish fly off the top rope, and a spiking with a screwdriver. But at least the Tiger Driver 91 that Ospreay either does or doesn't have a moral issue with, depending on the week, is still protected. I think Don Callis was right. I think he was on commentary. Ospreay should have hooked the leg. He might have got the win earlier. This isn't a pay-per-view review. Anyway, Damaris is right, of course. We all know wrestling is fake or scripted or predetermined or whatever adjective you wish to use, but she's apparently an actress. Can't she just pretend it's real and then go along with it, or at least, read the room, I guess? But I'm just really worried. Like, did she really think she was the only person in the building who didn't realise that pro wrestling was not on the level? I find it just partially fascinating, partially baffling why she would just come out with this. But anyway, here's the thing that really gets me, is that movies are fake as well, unless it's an exceptionally accurate biopic or documentary. And even those are worked to some extent. I mean, especially biopics, you've got to whack them out. But it's the same thing in the film industry or, television or books. It's all fake, phony, scripted. Stories are played out, and then agreed upon in advance. And the words are, at least in wrestling, some things might be ad-libbed for the most part. But for whatever reason, people who don't understand why people like pro wrestling cannot help themselves by talking about how fake pro wrestling is every 4 seconds. But then, why do these same people not act like this during other scripted shows? Like, do pro wrestling fans just go to the cinema and right before a climactic scene of a film, do they stand up and shout, "We all know this is bullshit, right? You can see the strings"? It doesn't happen. It's a very weird one-way system with pro wrestling. Everybody knows what it is, but for some reason, they think it's a revelation to tell people it's like, everybody knows, for Christ's sake. Anyway, pointing out to a wrestling fan that pro wrestling is fake is basically a stupid person's idea of trying to appear intellectual. Like, they are stating the obvious, like somehow you are oblivious to this fact. But next time this happens to you, and it will, trust me, ask said person what their favourite show is, a television stream, whatever it is, and they'll inevitably say, The Sopranos, or Friends, or Game of Thrones, or Orange is the New Black, or Ozark, or whatever it might be. And then ask them, did you think they were documentaries? It will shut down that line of questioning real fast, let me tell you. But, as an aside, both actresses were also interviewed on the AEW Revolution pre-show by several AEW faces, Jeff Jarrett and a couple of and also Paul Walter Hauser, who was there, who incidentally featured in Black Klansman with Damaris, who has a bit part in that as well. It was reported that Damaris also said the same thing on the pre-show, but I watched the pre-show and I didn't see her mention this at all, so I don't know if that's just misreporting or someone just heard something they didn't, or maybe I missed it, I don't know. But trust me, once was enough. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you for the next video, which should be out tomorrow, and that will be on Camille.